The Bruins are in Vegas to take on the Golden Knights, and I still can't help wondering whether the Bruins fired Bruce Cassidy a little too early.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Thursday, March 20th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200, in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On the show today, we are going to preview tonight's game against those Golden Knights. We are going to update the playoff odds as well as the draft lottery odds. It's a bit of a balancing act at the moment. And also touch on a look back at the Bruce Cassidy firing and whether it was ill-timed, especially in light of what has transpired since. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe. And also, if you haven't already, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. It's been almost 3 years now since the Bruins let Bruce Cassidy go, that infamous Don Sweeney visit to his home shortly after they had said, yeah, he's pretty safe. He was let go, almost immediately hired by the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Bruins, of course, went ahead and hired Jim Montgomery. We've had time to reflect on this move. There's been a lot of things that have transpired since, but it seems kind of as relevant as ever, especially with the Bruins taking on Vegas tonight. Now, on one hand, we all know Jim Montgomery led the team to a record-breaking regular season in his first year as Bruins head coach, winning the Jack Adams Trophy. On the other hand, Bruce Cassidy quickly proved his worth in Vegas, winning a Stanley Cup with the Golden Knights in his first season behind the bench. And now, with Jim Montgomery already having been fired by the Bruins and taking his new club, the St. Louis Blues, they're on the verge of making the playoffs in the Western Conference. Huge game tonight against the Vancouver Canucks, as both teams battling for a wild card spot. The question of whether the Bruins made the right call feels even more pressing. You know, I've talked before on the podcast that general managers really only get so many chances to hire a head coach. You already had Sweeney firing Claude Julien and bringing in Bruce Cassidy. You have him firing Cassidy, bringing in Jim Montgomery. You now have him firing Montgomery and replacing him with interim head coach Joe Sacco. The likelihood is that a new coach will be in the mix to begin next season. Very rarely do NHL GMs get the chance to hire 3 head coaches without it becoming apparent that maybe they're the issue. Maybe it's a roster composition issue and not necessarily who's coaching this team. But anyways, that's a discussion for the offseason if and when they do hire a new head coach. Now, why did the Bruins make that move in the first place? Well, after the 21-22 season, the front office hinted at a desire for a culture shift, perhaps. Cassidy's defensive system had brought success, but there were rumblings about player fatigue and frustration, especially among the younger players on the team. Your Jake DeBrusks, maybe your Trent Fredericks. Some of those younger players reportedly struggled under Cassidy's demanding style, and the brass believed the change in leadership might unlock more potential from the roster. Jim Montgomery was known for his more player-friendly approach, and he was brought in to bolster maybe a looser, more collaborative environment. And at first it worked. The Bruins went on to have that historic regular season. setting NHL records with 65 wins, 135 points. Everything seemed to validate Don Sweeney and Cam Neely's decision to move on from Cassidy until the playoffs hit, right? That first round exit against the Florida Panthers really stung. They were up 3-1 in the series after such a dominant regular season, and it exposed a key question. Did the Bruins sacrifice that postseason defensive, hardworking mentality and grit for that regular season dominance? Meanwhile, Cassidy didn't just move on. He thrived. He took a Vegas team that, while talented, faced a lot of adversity, coached them to a Stanley Cup championship in his first year. His structure, discipline, ability to adapt in high-pressure moments were on full display. Seeing him hoist the cup while Boston fans were left wondering what went wrong, it only intensified the second guessing. So what's the verdict? Was it the right decision? In the short term, you could argue that the fresh voice worked. The regular season success was undeniable. Montgomery's style brought out career years from several players, even last season getting career seasons from Pavel Zacha, Charlie Coyle, and what was meant to be a transition year. But in the long term, the Bruins' playoff struggles and Cassidy's rapid success make it harder to justify the move. It's also worth considering the timing. Boston was in win-now mode with Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci nearing the end of their careers, although there's some question as to whether Krejci would have come back if Cassidy was still behind the bench. Would Jake DeBrusk have rescinded his trade request if Cassidy was still behind the bench? Maybe they don't have that optimal roster if they don't make that move. Opting for a coach with a reputation for being player-friendly might have seemed like the best path to squeeze out one last cup run, but the gamble didn't pay off. Like we saw back in 2019, Bruce Cassidy took the team to the Stanley Cup final, but there were some questionable decisions along the way, and I will forever wonder what would have happened if David Backes was in the lineup for Game 7 against the St. Louis Blues. Yes, he hadn't been playing well, but come on, the opportunity for a Game 7 on home ice against the team you used to captain, you don't think that would have brought out some extra bit of oomph? I realize there were some players who had been scoring, who had been making contributions, but I mean, that will always haunt me as a decision that should have been made. And then you look at back in 2023 there, the Bruins, Jim Montgomery making some questionable decisions that kind of showed his, shall we say, some inexperience in the playoffs. Again, you look back at 2019 and you had a guy like Carson Kuhlman who had been scoring for the Bruins. They decided to keep him in over David Backes. Jim Montgomery's first kick at the can, he kind of fumbled the lines, maybe didn't go to Jeremy Swayman quick enough. The Bruins could have used that experience that Bruce Cassidy brought in lieu of having Jim Montgomery come in. And while he did have a successful regular season, some fumbles in the playoffs. With Montgomery's tenure cut short, the Bruins are once again searching for answers. The pressure is on Don Sweeney in the front office to find the right coach to lead this team forward. The question is it too late? Is the window closed? Yes. Will they get it right this time? Will they get the right person to lead this team through the retool? That remains to be seen, and it's a question for the offseason at this point. We'll touch on that when the time comes. For now, the Bruins are in Vegas tonight to take on the Golden Knights, and it is a game we will preview here as the podcast continues.
Did you know getting a good night's sleep is the #1 recipe for long-term success in life? I didn't. It took me way longer to realize than I'd like to admit. It was years of tossing and turning. I was always tired. I never felt like I could live up to my potential, but not anymore. Thanks to Bear Mattress. I used their sleep quiz and I matched with the Elite Hybrid. It's perfect for side sleepers like me. Now I wake up energized. I'm getting deeper sleeps and I'm ready to attack the day. No matter how you sleep, Bear Mattress has a match for you with a focus on recovery, cooling, and pressure relief to upgrade your sleep and improve your overall quality of life. Go to bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
All right, the Bruins are in Vegas tonight to take on the Golden Knights. Get your coffee ready because this is going to be a late one. If you're wanting to check out Fabian Lysel's re-debut with the Boston Bruins, this game begins at 10 p.m. Eastern. It's one of 14 games on the schedule. It's the second meeting between these two teams this season. Vegas winning 4-3 back on what was it? Early February at the very least. And Vegas, they kind of stole this one, scoring with 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining in the third period to rob the Bruins of a very valuable point. Vegas comes into this one first in the Pacific Division, 2 points up on the Edmonton Oilers, 4 tops in that division. They have a plus 38 goal differential, but they did lose their previous game coming into this one. We'll certainly be looking to get back on track against a pretty beatable Boston Bruins team. Let's be honest. Actually, the Golden Knights have lost 2 in a row, one to Buffalo in a shootout and then to Detroit. They're 5-3-2 over their last 10 games. However, they are led in scoring, Vegas is this season, by Jack Eichel, who's having a fantastic year, much to my annoyance because I had traded him back last summer in my salary cap keeper league. He's got 21 goals, 59 assists, leading the way in goals for this team. 2 players tied with 27 goals apiece through 67 games. You have Pavel Dorofeyev and Thomas Hertl, both with 27 goals for this team. On the back end, they are led by Shea Theodore, who's got 7 goals, 41 assists. Noah Hannafin, Alex Pietrangelo, Braden McNabb, Zach Whitecloud, Nick Hague, rounding out a very impressive defense core for the Vegas Golden Knights. Aiden Hill, their goaltender, just signed a 6-year contract extension. He's got a .907 save percentage this season with a record of 24-11-5. Jeremy Swayman likely in net after getting the night off the other night against Buffalo, the overtime loss in which Jonas Korpisalo was in net. Swayman with a 20-23-6 record, .897 save percentage. Over the last 5 games, it's Dorofeyev who leads the way with 3 goals for this team. Thomas Hertl with 6 total points. Eichel with 4 assists. For the Bruins, David Pastrnak leads the way with 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points. And he, of course, is the runaway points leader for this team. 83 points, double the next leading scorer for this team, who is Pavel Zacha at 41. Casey Middlestat, Morgan Geekie, each with 37. Lindholm with 36. And then there's a huge jump down from there. Cole Koepke, Mark Kastelik at 14 points apiece. Obviously, scoring is an issue for this team. They rank 27th in the NHL, 23rd in defense. Vegas, a top 10 team in both categories. They have the 6th ranked offense, scoring 3.3 goals per game, and the 8th ranked defense, allowing only 2.7. Their power play is phenomenal, 2nd ranked 28.8% success rate, compared to Boston, who's at 29th, 14.9 success rate. And then their penalty kill, not super great. Vegas, they're only at 22nd ranked. The Bruins are ranked 24th. So on paper here, this is a game that Vegas is very likely to win. Again, coached by Bruce Cassidy, we know his style of play. Everybody chipping in defensively. But Jack Eichel has kind of been unleashed here this season. They had typically in the past been a very balanced offensive team, but right now, Jack Eichel clearly leading the way, and this is a team that sits 5th overall in points, actually tied for 4th with the Carolina Hurricanes, and their goal differential is 6th the best in the NHL at plus 38. They are, again, only 5-3-2 over their past 10, but they have a fantastic home record, 24-7-3, and the Bruins road record so far this season is 11-18-3. They're 3-6-1 over their past 10, coming off that overtime loss to Buffalo with a minus 35 goal differential. Not adding up to great amount of success for the Bruins. That's the 6th worst goal differential in the NHL this season. So, what do you think? Bruins win, lose tonight? I was asked that on the YouTube comments yesterday. It's very unlikely that the Bruins win tonight. That will increase their lottery odds, decrease their playoff chances, and will update both of those here as the podcast continues. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it so easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. And the FanDuel app is simple to use. When you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Hey, I just want to thank you all once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In a big game tonight between the Boston Bruins and the Vegas Golden Knights. The Bruins will be looking to keep their very thin playoff hopes alive. Now, when you look at the standings, and Joe Sacco said this the other day, that the Bruins still seemingly very much in the thick of the playoff race. They are only 4 points out of the second wildcard spot, a position that's currently held by the Montreal Canadiens of all teams, despite their minus 16 goal differential. But the Bruins have an even 500-point percentage and would have to jump the Detroit Red Wings, the Columbus Blue Jackets, New York Islanders, New York Rangers, and the Canadiens in order to jump into that playoff spot. And therefore, their current playoff odds pretty slim. And you add in the fact that they have only 13 games remaining on the schedule, whereas some of these teams have 14 or 15. It's kind of difficult to imagine them jumping back into a playoff spot. And Money Puck right now has Boston's odds at 0.9%. So a less than 1% chance of making the playoffs, according to Money Puck. If we look at the Athletic, they have the Bruins slightly better odds. They're at 4% right now. First overall draft pick, they're at 4%. When it comes to making the playoffs, they're at 2%. Then if we look at, a better chance of making or getting the first overall pick than making the playoffs. We kind of want that to skew a bit further to the first overall draft pick. We'll take a look at the tankathon here in a minute. Now, when it comes to hockey reference, they have the Bruins at 1.1%. So not looking too good. At most, a 2% chance of making the playoffs for the Boston Bruins. Now, if we look at the tankathon.com, the Bruins currently have the 9th best odds at getting the first overall pick. They have them at 5%. Let's just run the sim lottery. We'll do that every day now for the next little bit. Keeps the Bruins, my first run at it, keeps the Bruins at a 5% chance not getting the 9th overall pick based on this simulation. Let's run it again. One more time. Still the Bruins in 9th. Another time. Oh, Bruins moved down to 10th. That's not great. 4th time, they're back at 9th. Try one more time. Oh, the Bruins, first overall pick. The 5th time that I run the NHL draft simulator. So, that would be fantastic. If the Bruins could, and again, I talked about this earlier in the week. At this point in the season, based on the lineup that they're deploying, based on expectations for the remainder of the season, while Joe Sacco and the players are talking about grinding it out every night, trying to pick up as many points as possible, still a chance to make it to the Stanley Cup playoffs. The reality is it would be more prudent to try to finish as low as possible in the standings and get the highest possible pick, because we know it's the idea is to have a fairly quick turnaround here and for the Bruins to be competitive once again next season with Jeremy Swayman hopefully back in form, Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy back in the lineup healthy, hopefully more settled contributions from Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, Casey Middlestat, making the most of this opportunity to be a top 6 center. Some different things, plus a bunch of cap space that they have to spend. The Bruins hopefully will be a better team next season. And if they can sell these guys that they did, get all the picks and prospects and players that they got back, and get a top 10, top 5, number 1 overall draft pick, that would be kind of a win for the Bruins, all things considered, because this season has really gone off the rails. Am I right? So they're playing in Vegas tonight, 10 p.m. start. We'll be back tomorrow to recap whatever happens in Vegas. It will not stay in Vegas. It will be talked about on this podcast. We will also bring you the latest on Fabian Lysel's performance, on Jeremy Swayman, whether or not he seems on track to turn things around. Try to have a little fun here on the podcast as well, because, it sucks when your favorite hockey team isn't playing great. It's been a long time since we were in this position where they were just actively not trying to be good. They did miss the playoffs a couple of times in the mid 2010s, but that was by the slimmest of margins. It's been since 2007 that this team was really bad. So 18 years. You could have been born and graduated high school in that amount of time. Since the Bruins were that bad, I moved to Scotland for a year. I have had 3 kids, one of whom is in high school. It's been a long time. So we're going to try to keep having some fun here on the podcast. There's still things to keep an eye out for, still things to get excited about. Young guys stepping up, Casey Middlestat's contributions, Marat, who's Nudinov. Did I do it? His speed, his skill, Zadorov breaking up plays, maybe punching a few faces along the way. There's still things to get excited about with this team, and we're going to cover it all here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every day. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.